I always believed that being the responsible daughter would pay off someday. I worked 3 jobs through college while my younger brother Tyler partied his way through an expensive private school that my parents paid for completely. I graduated debt-free through my own sweat and tears, moved to Chicago, and built a successful career in marketing. But when my parents cut me off financially at 21, because I refused to lend Tyler money for his fourth failed business venture, I thought our relationship was over. Little did I know they would come crawling back 2 years later, expecting me to save the very son they had always favored over me. Before we dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button if this resonates with you, and do not forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about family dynamics and finding your strength. Now let me tell you exactly how I learned to set boundaries with people who only saw me as their backup plan. Growing up in suburban Denver, I learned early that love in my family came with conditions. My parents, David and Margaret, ran a small accounting firm together and prided themselves on being practical people who valued hard work and responsibility. At least that is what they told themselves. The reality was quite different when it came to how they treated their 2 children. Tyler, 18 months younger than me, was their golden boy from the moment he could walk. When he broke things, it was just boys being boys. When I accidentally spilled juice on their white carpet at age 7, I spent the entire weekend scrubbing it with a toothbrush while Tyler played video games. When he failed algebra in 9th grade, they hired an expensive tutor and blamed the school for not recognizing his learning style. When I struggled with chemistry, they told me I needed to try harder and figure it out myself. The pattern continued through high school. Tyler played varsity football and basketball, and my parents never missed a game. They bought him new cleats, paid for private coaching, and drove him to tournaments 3 states away. Meanwhile, I worked weekends at the local library, maintained a 4.0 grade average, and participated in debate club, academic bowl, and volunteer work at the animal shelter. My parents attended exactly 2 of my debate competitions in 4 years, both times leaving early to pick up Tyler from practice. When college applications came around, the disparity became even more glaring. My parents had already promised Tyler they would pay for whatever school he wanted to attend. They took him on visits to expensive private colleges, stayed in nice hotels, and treated these trips like family vacations that I was somehow never invited on. When I mentioned wanting to visit the University of Colorado, my mother sighed and said we could drive up for the day, if I really thought it was necessary. Tyler chose Westfield Academy, a small private college in Vermont that cost $62,000 per year. My parents beamed with pride when he got accepted and immediately started planning how to fund his education. They refinanced the house, took out parent loans, and my father even picked up weekend tax preparation work to cover the costs. Tyler would graduate without a single dollar of debt. My acceptance to the University of Colorado Boulder came with a partial academic scholarship, but I still needed to cover about $28,000 per year for tuition room and board. When I brought this up at dinner one evening, my father barely looked up from his plate. "You are smart, Faith," he said, cutting his steak methodically. "You will figure out how to make it work." My mother nodded in agreement. "There are plenty of student loans available, and you can get a job on campus. It will be good for you to learn financial responsibility early." The irony was not lost on me, but I knew better than to argue. I had learned years ago that advocating for myself in this family was seen as selfish and ungrateful. So I figured it out. I worked 3 jobs throughout college tutoring other students in math and English, working at the campus bookstore, and cleaning office buildings downtown on weekends. I lived in the cheapest dorm available, bought used textbooks, and survived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches. While I was pulling all-nighters between work shifts and study sessions, Tyler was pledging the most expensive fraternity at Westfield, taking ski trips to Aspen, and changing his major for the 3rd time. My parents visited him regularly, bringing care packages filled with his favorite snacks and enough cash to cover his social activities. They sent him to Europe for a semester abroad junior year, a trip that cost an additional $15,000. During my junior year, I applied for a competitive internship with a marketing firm in Denver. The position was unpaid, but it offered incredible experience and networking opportunities that could launch my career. When I called home to share the good news about being selected, my mother interrupted me mid-sentence. "That is nice, dear, but we need to talk about Tyler. He wants to start a business with some fraternity brothers, and they need investors. We think you should consider contributing." I stood in my tiny dorm room phone, pressed to my ear, wondering if I had heard correctly. "You want me to invest in Tyler's business?" "It is a great opportunity," my father chimed in from the background. "They want to start a craft beer brewing company. The market is really hot right now." "With what money?" I asked, genuinely confused. "I am working 3 jobs just to pay for school." "You could take out additional student loans," my mother suggested casually, as if she were asking me to pick up milk from the store. "Just a small amount, maybe $10,000. Tyler really needs this chance to prove himself." The conversation ended badly. I refused to take on more debt to fund my brother's latest whim, and my parents made it clear that they were disappointed in my selfishness. The brewing business never materialized anyway, but the damage to our relationship was done. They stopped calling regularly, and when I did hear from them, it was usually because they needed something. Graduation day arrived with little fanfare from my family. My parents attended the ceremony, but spent most of the time talking about Tyler's upcoming senior year and his new idea to open a food truck business. They left immediately after the ceremony to drive back to Denver, missing the celebration dinner I had planned with my college friends. I moved to Chicago 3 weeks later with everything I owned packed into my Honda Civic. I had landed an entry-level position with Morrison & Associates, a mid-sized marketing firm, and I was determined to build the life I wanted without depending on anyone else. My starting salary was $38,000, which felt like a fortune after 4 years of scraping by, but most of it went to student loan payments and living expenses in an expensive city. My apartment was a studio in Wicker Park that I shared with approximately 17 cockroaches and a neighbor who played drums at 2 in the morning. But it was mine, and I had earned every square foot of it. I bought my furniture from thrift stores, and Craigslist learned to cook actual meals instead of surviving on processed food, and slowly started building a life that felt authentic and sustainable. The first year was brutal. I worked 60-hour weeks, took on every project my supervisors offered, and volunteered for the assignments that nobody else wanted. I studied marketing trends in my spare time, took online courses to improve my skills, and networked at industry events, even though I could barely afford the admission fees. But slowly it started paying off. Meanwhile, Tyler was having a different kind of senior year experience. The food truck business fell through when his business partner dropped out to focus on medical school applications. Tyler then decided he wanted to become a professional poker player and spent most of his final semester in underground gambling clubs instead of attending classes. He graduated with a 2.1 grade average and a business degree he had no intention of using. My parents were disappointed, but not surprised. They spent graduation weekend talking about Tyler's potential and how he just needed to find the right opportunity to flourish. When I suggested that maybe he should get a job like most college graduates, my mother looked at me like I had suggested he join a circus. "Tyler is not like other people," she explained patiently. "He needs something that challenges his creative mind. Traditional employment would just crush his spirit." So Tyler moved back into his childhood bedroom and began what my parents called his exploration phase. He spent his days sleeping until noon, playing video games, and researching various get-rich-quick schemes he found online. He briefly considered becoming a YouTube influencer, then thought about starting a dropshipping business, then got excited about cryptocurrency trading. None of these ventures progressed beyond the daydreaming phase, but my parents continued to support him financially while he figured things out. During this time, I was experiencing my own kind of growth in Chicago. I received my first promotion after 14 months with the company, along with a salary increase to $48,000. I moved to a better apartment, one with actual walls, separating the bedroom from the living room. And I bought my first piece of new furniture, a dining table, where I could eat meals like a civilized human being. My second promotion came 18 months later, bumping me up to $58,000 and a position as senior account coordinator. I was managing campaigns for several major clients, leading a small team, and developing a reputation within the company as someone who could handle complex projects under tight deadlines. I felt proud of what I was building, even if my family seemed completely uninterested in my achievements. When I called home to share news of my second promotion, Tyler answered the phone. He was in the middle of his latest business venture, creating artisanal candles that he planned to sell at farmers markets. He had convinced my parents to invest $6,000 in supplies and equipment, and he was excited to tell me about his vision for becoming the premier candle maker in the Denver metro area. "That sounds great," I said, trying to inject enthusiasm into my voice. "How is the business plan coming along?" "Business plan?" Tyler laughed. "Faith, you cannot plan creativity. You just have to follow your passion and trust that the universe will provide." The candle business lasted exactly 3 farmers market appearances before Tyler decided that retail sales were beneath his artistic vision. The $6,000 worth of supplies ended up in my parents' garage, where they remained for the next 2 years. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was in my office preparing for a client presentation when my mother called, her voice tight with stress. "Faith, we need to talk about Tyler." I glanced at my watch. The presentation was in 45 minutes, and I still needed to review my notes. "Can this wait until tonight? I am in the middle of something important at work." "This cannot wait," she said firmly. "Tyler is in trouble, and we need your help." The story came out in pieces over the next 20 minutes. Tyler, now 25 and still living at home, had finally moved out 6 months earlier to live with his girlfriend Jessica in an expensive apartment downtown. He had been working part-time at a boutique fitness studio, teaching yoga classes and personal training sessions, while pursuing his latest passion, day trading stocks. According to my mother, Tyler had a natural gift for understanding market trends. He had been making small profits for several months, which convinced him to invest larger amounts of money. The problem was that the money was not his to invest. He had been using the credit cards my parents had given him for emergencies, running up massive debt that he kept hidden from them. "How much debt are we talking about?" I asked, already dreading the answer. $47,000 across 4 credit cards, my mother said quietly. I sat down hard in my office chair. $47,000 was more than my entire annual salary just 2 years earlier. And he spent all of this on stock trading. "He says it was investments, not gambling," my father interjected, apparently having been listening on speakerphone. "He just had some bad luck with the market, but he knows what he is doing now. He has a system." The cognitive dissonance was staggering. Tyler had no formal training in financial markets, no track record of successful business ventures, and no apparent understanding of risk management. But my parents were describing his reckless gambling as if he were a misunderstood investment prodigy. "So, what exactly do you want from me?" I asked, though I was starting to suspect I knew the answer. "We want you to help us pay off the debt," my mother said. "We have already liquidated our retirement savings and taken out a second mortgage on the house, but we are still about $18,000 short. We know you have been doing well in Chicago, and we thought maybe you could contribute." I stared out my office window at the Chicago skyline, processing what I had just heard. My parents had sacrificed their retirement security to clean up Tyler's gambling debts, and now they wanted me to contribute my hard-earned savings to complete the bailout. "I need to think about this," I said finally. "There is not much time to think," my father replied. "The credit card companies are threatening legal action, and Tyler's credit is already ruined. If we do not settle this soon, it could affect our credit scores too." After hanging up the phone, I sat in my office trying to focus on my presentation materials, but my mind kept racing through the implications of what my parents had asked. $18,000 was more than a third of my annual salary. It represented every dollar I had managed to save over the past 3 years, plus additional money I would need to borrow. But more than the financial impact, I was struggling with the fundamental unfairness of the situation. Tyler had created this mess through reckless decisions and poor judgment, yet somehow I was being asked to sacrifice my financial security to fix it. Meanwhile, Tyler faced no real consequences for his actions beyond some damaged credit, which my parents seemed determined to repair as quickly as possible. The presentation went poorly. I stumbled through my talking points, forgot key details about the client's objectives, and failed to answer several basic questions about our proposed strategy. My supervisor pulled me aside afterward to ask if everything was okay, and I assured her it was just a minor personal matter that I would resolve quickly. That evening, I sat in my apartment running calculations. If I contributed the $18,000, I would need to drain my savings account cash out the small retirement fund I had started, and probably take out a personal loan to cover the difference. I would be back to living paycheck to paycheck just like my college years, except now I had higher expenses and more financial responsibilities. I called my best friend Sarah, who had been my roommate senior year of college and was now working as a financial advisor in Seattle. After I explained the situation, she was quiet for a long moment. "Faith," she said finally, "you know this is not your responsibility, right?" "But he is my brother," I replied, voicing the guilt that had been eating at me all day. "And you are not his parent or his financial guardian," Sarah said firmly. "Your parents chose to enable his behavior for years, and now they want you to participate in the enabling. What happens the next time Tyler makes a catastrophic financial decision?" It was a question I had been avoiding, but Sarah was right to ask it. Nothing in Tyler's history suggested that this bailout would teach him responsible financial behavior. If anything, it would reinforce his belief that someone would always be there to clean up his messes. I called my parents the next evening to give them my decision. My mother answered on the second ring, and I could hear the hope in her voice when she realized it was me. "I have thought about your request," I began carefully, "and I cannot contribute money to pay off Tyler's debt." The silence stretched for several seconds before my father spoke. "Cannot or will not?" "Both," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. "I do not have $18,000 available to give away, and even if I did, I would not use it to enable Tyler's irresponsible behavior." "Enable," my mother repeated, her voice rising. "Faith, this is not enabling. This is helping family during a crisis." "A crisis that Tyler created," I pointed out. "And a crisis that you are asking me to solve while Tyler faces no real consequences for his actions. What is he contributing to this bailout? What sacrifices is he making? What guarantees do we have that he will not do this again?" My father cleared his throat. "Tyler is going to pay us back once he gets his trading strategy perfected. He has learned from his mistakes, and he is confident he can recover the losses." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Even in the midst of financial catastrophe, my parents were still believing Tyler's promises about his non-existent business acumen. "So Tyler plans to continue day trading?" I asked. "The same activity that got him into this debt in the first place." "It was just a learning curve," my mother insisted. "Tyler understands the markets now. He has been studying and developing new techniques." The conversation continued for another 30 minutes, with my parents alternating between guilt trips and logical arguments about family loyalty. They reminded me of all the times they had supported me conveniently, omitting the fact that their support had been significantly less generous than what they had provided Tyler. They suggested that I was being selfish and short-sighted, and that successful people have a responsibility to help their less fortunate family members. "Tyler is not less fortunate," I finally said, my patience exhausted. "Tyler is irresponsible. There is a difference. I cannot believe you would abandon your own brother," my mother said, her voice cold. After everything we have done for you. What exactly have you done for me? I asked the question popping out before I could stop myself. Another long silence. When my father spoke, his voice was controlled but angry. We raised you, educated you, and taught you values, he said. If you cannot see the importance of family loyalty, then we clearly failed in that education. You taught me values, I agreed. You taught me that actions have consequences, that hard work pays off, and that people should take responsibility for their decisions. I'm applying those values to this situation. Fine, my mother said abruptly. If you will not help your brother, then do not expect us to help you when you need it. I have never asked you for help, I pointed out. I put myself through college, moved to a new city, without any support from you, and built my career without any assistance. I do not need you to help me because I learned to help myself. The conversation ended with my father telling me that I was making a huge mistake and would regret my selfishness. My mother hung up without saying goodbye. Over the following weeks, the calls continued. Sometimes it was my parents, sometimes Tyler himself, occasionally Tyler's girlfriend Jessica, joining in to explain how stressed Tyler was about the situation. The basic message was always the same. I was the only one in a position to solve this problem, and my refusal to help was tearing the family apart. Tyler's calls were particularly manipulative. He oscillated between anger and self-pity, sometimes threatening to hurt himself if the debt was not resolved, other times promising to pay me back double within 6 months through his trading profits. During one particularly dramatic conversation, he accused me of enjoying his suffering and suggested that I had always been jealous of the attention he received from our parents. You have always resented me, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Now you finally have a chance to get revenge, and you are taking it. This is not about revenge, I replied. This is about consequences. You created this situation through your choices, and now you need to deal with the results. Easy for you to say, Tyler shot back. You have always been the perfect daughter. Everything comes easily to you. I almost laughed at the absurdity of that statement. Nothing in my life had come easily. Every achievement, every promotion, every dollar in my savings account had been earned through effort and sacrifice. But Tyler had been so insulated from consequences that he genuinely believed other people's success was simply a matter of luck. As the weeks passed, my parents' tactics became more desperate. They sent me articles about successful siblings who had helped each other achieve greatness. They forwarded me Tyler's latest business plan, which involved starting a cryptocurrency investment fund, despite his recent disasters with financial markets. They even suggested that I could consider the $18,000 a loan rather than a gift, though they could not explain how Tyler would realistically be able to repay it. The final straw came when they informed me that they had told Tyler I was planning to help with the debt. According to my mother, Tyler had been so relieved by this news that he had already started making plans for his next business venture, confident that his financial problems would soon be resolved. You told him what? I asked, incredulous. We told him you were considering it, my mother corrected. We thought it might motivate you to make the right decision if you knew how much it meant to him. The right decision is for Tyler to get a full-time job and start paying off his own debt, I said. The right decision is for all of you to stop treating me like Tyler's personal bailout fund. That night, I made a decision that would change my relationship with my family forever. I blocked all of their phone numbers and email addresses. I was done being manipulated, guilt-tripped, and emotionally blackmailed into solving problems I had not created. The silence that followed was both liberating and terrifying. For the first time in months, I could focus on my work without constant interruption from family drama. My performance improved dramatically, and my supervisor noticed the change immediately. I received positive feedback on several client presentations and was assigned to lead a major campaign for a new client. But the isolation was also difficult. I had cut myself off from my entire family, including extended relatives who might not have been aware of the situation. I found myself wondering what was happening back in Denver, whether Tyler had figured out how to resolve his debt, and whether my parents were okay financially after liquidating their retirement savings. 3 months later, I received a text message from Tyler's girlfriend, Jessica, who apparently was not blocked because I had never given her my contact information. The message was brief but revealing. Tyler had to declare bankruptcy. Your parents lost the house. Hope you are happy. I stared at the message for several minutes, processing the implications. My parents had gambled their financial security on Tyler's promises and lost everything. Part of me felt guilty for not preventing this disaster, but a larger part of me recognized that their choices had led to this outcome. I called Sarah to talk through my feelings about the news. You know this is not your fault, right? She said immediately after I explained the situation. I could have prevented it, I said. If I had just contributed the money they asked for, my parents would not have lost their house. Faith, listen to yourself, Sarah said firmly. Your parents chose to liquidate their retirement and mortgage their house to pay Tyler's gambling debts. You did not force them to make those choices. And even if you had contributed the $18,000, what would have stopped Tyler from creating another financial disaster 6 months later? She was right, of course. Tyler's problems were not a one-time crisis, but a pattern of irresponsible behavior that my parents had been enabling for years. My contribution would have delayed the inevitable collapse, not prevented it. Over the following year, I threw myself into work with renewed focus and energy. Without the constant drain of family drama, I found that I had more mental bandwidth for creative thinking and strategic planning. My campaigns were generating excellent results for clients, and I was building a reputation within the industry as an innovative and reliable account manager. I received my third promotion in 4 years, along with a salary increase to $78,000 and a new title, marketing director. The position came with profit-sharing bonuses, better health insurance, and 2 weeks of additional vacation time. For the first time in my life, I felt financially secure and professionally confident. I used my increased income to build a proper emergency fund, max out my retirement contributions, and even start saving for a down payment on a condo. I was living the life I had always wanted, free from financial stress and family manipulation. But I also felt a deep sadness about the state of my family relationships. I missed having people to call with good news about work achievements. I missed having a family to visit during holidays, even if those visits had often been stressful. I missed the idea of being part of a supportive family unit, even though I recognized that my actual family had never provided that kind of support. 2 years after cutting off contact, I received a letter from my father. It arrived at my office suggesting that he had put some effort into tracking down my current address. The letter was handwritten on legal pad paper and filled with an odd mixture of apology and continued justification for their past behavior. He explained that Tyler was working as a server at a chain restaurant and living in a studio apartment across town from them. My parents had downsized to a small rental house and were both working part-time jobs to supplement their Social Security income. Tyler was supposed to be contributing to the family's expenses, but rarely had money left over after paying for his own living costs. The most surprising part of the letter was my father's admission that they had been wrong to expect me to solve Tyler's problems. He wrote that they had spent months in financial counseling, learning about enabling behavior and healthy family boundaries. Their counselor had helped them understand that their approach to parenting had been unfair to both Tyler and me, though for different reasons. We know we cannot undo the damage we have caused, the letter concluded, but we hope someday you will be willing to consider rebuilding our relationship on healthier terms. I read the letter several times, feeling a complex mixture of validation, sadness, and cautious hope. This was the first time my parents had acknowledged that their treatment of Tyler and me had been unequal and problematic. It was also the first time they had admitted that Tyler's problems were consequences of his own choices, rather than bad luck or external circumstances. But I was not ready to respond immediately. Too much damage had been done, too many years of manipulation and emotional blackmail had occurred for me to simply forgive and forget because of one letter. I decided to sit with the letter for several months while I continued building my life in Chicago. I started dating someone seriously, for the first time since college, a fellow marketing professional named David, who was kind, ambitious, and emotionally mature. I made deeper friendships with colleagues and neighbors. I traveled to places I had always wanted to visit, taking advantage of my vacation time and financial stability. During this time, I also started seeing a therapist to work through my feelings about my family and to develop better boundaries for future relationships. Therapy helped me understand that my parents' favoritism toward Tyler had been emotionally damaging in ways I had not fully recognized. I had spent years trying to earn their approval through achievement and responsibility, never realizing that their approval was not available on equal terms. But therapy also helped me understand that holding on to anger and resentment was not serving my own well-being. I could acknowledge the harm that had been done while still choosing to move forward in whatever way felt healthiest for me. 6 months after receiving my father's letter, I decided to write back. My response was brief and carefully worded. I thanked them for acknowledging their mistakes and expressed cautious interest in rebuilding our relationship. But I also established clear boundaries about what kinds of interactions I was willing to have. I would not discuss Tyler's financial situation or be asked to provide money or advice for his problems. I would not serve as a mediator for family conflicts or a source of emotional support for issues I had not created. I would not tolerate guilt trips, manipulation, or attempts to make me responsible for other people's choices. If they could respect these boundaries, I was open to occasional phone calls and maybe even a visit to Denver sometime in the future. If they could not respect these boundaries, I preferred to continue our separation rather than return to unhealthy patterns of interaction. My father called 3 weeks after receiving my letter. The conversation was awkward but respectful. He told me about their new living situation and their part-time jobs without asking for sympathy or financial assistance. He asked about my work and my life in Chicago without trying to give unsolicited advice or express disappointment about my choices. When he mentioned Tyler briefly, it was to share that Tyler had enrolled in community college to study automotive technology and seemed to be taking his life more seriously. There was no suggestion that I should reach out to Tyler or contribute to his educational expenses. There was no implication that Tyler's progress was somehow connected to my willingness to help him. We talked for 27 minutes, and while it was not the warm family conversation I had dreamed of having someday, it felt honest and sustainable. We agreed to talk again in a month and to see how things progressed from there. That phone call marked the beginning of a very gradual and careful reconstruction of my relationship with my parents. It took more than a year of monthly phone calls before I felt comfortable visiting Denver for a long weekend. It took another year before we could spend time together without me feeling emotionally drained afterward. Tyler and I have still never had a direct conversation about what happened. He sent me a brief email 2 years ago, apologizing for his past behavior and thanking me for not enabling his poor decisions, even though he had not appreciated it at the time. I appreciated the gesture, but I am not interested in developing a close relationship with him. Too much water has passed under that bridge, and I have learned that I do not owe anyone a relationship simply because we share DNA. Today, I am 32 years old and living a life that feels authentic and fulfilling. I bought a condo in Lincoln Park last year, and I am in a committed relationship with someone who treats me as an equal partner. I have been promoted to senior marketing director and am being considered for a vice president position. I have close friendships, interesting hobbies, and financial security that I built entirely through my own efforts. My relationship with my parents is cordial but limited. We talk every few weeks and see each other once or twice a year. They no longer ask me for money or try to involve me in Tyler's problems. Tyler has apparently learned some life skills through necessity, though I understand he still struggles with consistent employment and financial planning. The most important thing I learned from this experience is that saying no to unreasonable requests is not selfish or cruel. It is an essential life skill that protects your own well-being while also preventing you from enabling other people's unhealthy behavior. My refusal to bail out Tyler forced him to face the consequences of his choices and eventually led to positive changes in his life, even though that was not my primary motivation. I also learned that family relationships should not be based on financial transactions or crisis management. Healthy families support each other emotionally and celebrate each other's successes, but they do not expect one person to sacrifice their own financial security to fix problems created by another person's poor judgment. Looking back, I am proud of the decision I made to prioritize my own financial health over my family's expectations. It was not easy, and it came with real costs in terms of family relationships, but it also allowed me to build the stable, independent life I had always wanted. And it eventually led to healthier dynamics with the family members who were willing to change their behavior. Have you ever been asked to sacrifice your own financial security to bail out a family member who created their own problems? How did you handle the pressure and guilt that comes with saying no to people you love? I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with anyone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. And do not forget to subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries, building independence, and creating the life you actually want rather than the life others expect you to live. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that choosing your own well-being is not selfish. It is essential. Until next time, take care of yourselves and trust your instincts about what feels right for your own life.